Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events. We'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. For now, be kind, do good, and enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hey listeners, welcome to Ridgewood Talks. As you know, our hyperlocal podcast is dedicated to discussing issues that impact the residents of Ridgewood. One of the most popular aspects of the show is our interviews with political candidates, and this year's election is no exception. While national politics often grab our attention, it's crucial to remember how local elections shape our daily lives. It's been said that democracy dies in our backyard. And that's why Ridgewood Talks is sitting down with candidates running for the Board of Education. There are 2 board seats, each with a 3-year term, and 1 board seat with the 1-year term on the ballot. The candidates are running unopposed, but we feel it's important for our listeners to learn as much as they can about our elected officials and their governing process. The questions we're asking today came directly from you, our audience. Our guest today is Ridgewood Board of Education member Muhammed Mahmoud. He's running for the regular 3-year term. Muhammed got his first taste of life on the Board of Education in 2019 when he was appointed as a temporary member and ran for re-election in 2022. Muhammed has been married to his wife for 20 years, and they have 6 children, ranging in ages from 18 to 1 year old. They've lived in Ridgewood since 2016. Muhammed earned his bachelor's degree in political science and economics from Rutgers University, and he is currently vice president of enterprise strategic accounts at Salesforce. So welcome, Muhammed. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So as I said in the intro, all of these questions came from our listeners, so we're just going to kick it right off. So if listeners want to learn more about you after this interview, where should they look?
That is a good question. I don't have an official campaign page up right now because we are running uncontested. I believe the League of Women Voters has my biography, so that probably could be a good place to start.
Oh, that's great. I also think people can find information about the committees that you're on if they just go to the Ridgewood Public Schools website and look under the category of Board of Education members. So let's go into that. The Ridgewood Board of Education election is uncontested due to a lack of competition for the available seats. And there's been more community engagement at Board of Education meetings in the past, 5 or 6 years. So our listeners want to know, given that, why do you think that there aren't enough challengers stepping forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in general, I believe, more candidates and more options on the ballot is always better for our democracy, right? More choices, more opinions and things like that are always better. I do think actually the reason this election we don't have any challengers is a good sign. I do believe we've actually made significant progress in the district level in the last 2 to 3 years, all positive progress, where I think a lot of previous hot topic or hot button issues, if you will, have been put to bed. And so I think that's appeased a lot of people in the community where they feel that the district is in a good place and going in the right direction. There is a lot of work still to be done, of course, but we have put a lot of issues to bed recently. And so that's why I believe we don't have any challengers currently, and happy to elaborate on kind of more of those issues if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go into that because that's one of the questions that our listeners asked about, that the Board of Education went through a tumultuous time and, they want to know, what was that fuss all about?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I think it's been a combination of dynamics over the last few years, but in essence, what's happened the last few years is we have a new superintendent that we hired from Madison under, I think he's not even been 2 years, Dr. Schwartz, who's been doing a phenomenal job. He's been getting out in the community. He's been doing monthly coffees with the community. We've implemented even a new kind of outreach system to the community where we can get feedback through the system called Thought Exchange. And we have hundreds and hundreds and sometimes even thousands of responses and feedback through that. So I think we are doing a better job getting the community engaged and getting their feedback incorporated. We also hired a new director of HR in the last 2 years who's been doing a phenomenal job with our vacancies. For example, just about 2 years ago, we had a big issue with a lot of aides, a lot of para aides for our special education needs that were vacant, or the roles that were open and vacant, and that was affecting the quality of our education for our students. We made some changes. We raised pay by 10%. Made some other changes to the programs and really focused on hiring. And now, fast forward 2 years later, we have very little vacancies in the district, especially in the AIDS space. So again, a new superintendent, new director of HR, very, very new. Just in the last couple of weeks, we actually have a new business administrator that's joined us from Patterson. We also have a new director of communications, Christine Corliss, who's been streamlining the website. We have a brand new website. We've been streamlining communication out to the community through our email blasts, streamlining how the HSAs in each school communicate, right? So it's not kind of all over the place and different. For example, one little simple thing, if Travell HSA put out a link to register for an event on Tuesday afternoon, but Orchard, for example, put it out Wednesday morning, it might be full by the time the Orchard parents got to see it. So streamlining that communication just leads to a better experience. So as you can see, kind of 4 of our key, admin leadership team have changed in the last 2 years, and all of them have been doing a phenomenal job. We've also had other changes, right? We've dug into the ELA curriculum. We've dug into the math curriculum. We've made changes. We flipped the geometry algebra order, which has been something that some parents were really asking for. So now parents feel a lot better about our focus on curriculum. We've also kept finances within the 2% budget cap over the last few years, so parents feel we're in a good position financially as well. So I think, these are just examples of a lot of positive changes that have happened in the district over the last few years. And so that's personally just my assumption as to why we don't have a lot of challenges.
So congratulations, because you've accomplished a lot in the last 3 years. And so one of our questions here today from one of our listeners is, what accomplishments during your time are you the most proud of?
So we have done a lot, like I said, the new superintendent who's been reaching out, new communication strategy with our community, new HR focus, new business admin and business focus. All of these have been great, but truthfully, the one thing I'm actually most proud of, I would say, is finally getting Late Start implemented at the high school level. It's something that our community has been talking about for over 10 years that we finally were able to do just a few years ago. And that's something I'm the most proud of, because that's just a direct impact to our children, where we can give them, half an hour back every morning for sleep. And all the research shows that that's positive and beneficial for our adolescents as they're growing and maturing and developing. From a mental health perspective, social health perspective, physical health perspective, and academic perspective, all the research shows that our kids need it. And so I'm happy that we were able, it sounds like something so simple, but with such a big bureaucratic district like Ridgewood, to get something like that done and accomplished has meant a lot. So that's probably the one thing I would point to, and a lot of other things, but if I had to pick one, that would be the one.
Well, you can expound. Tell us more about some of the things that you're proud of.
Yeah, and again, I think also just this was previously in my previous term. We implemented also vape detectors in each and every single high school bathroom. It was not a big expense. It was like $2,000 per bathroom. But that something so simple like that just enabled our administrators to be able to, I hate to use the word, right, but catch these students that are vaping in the bathrooms, not to necessarily give them a consequence or a punishment, but to actually get them the help they needed. Basil, may he rest in peace, before he passed away, when one of our board meetings told us you'd be surprised so many of these kids when we get them in the office to ask them, most of them were not belligerent or, putting up a front for defense. They were said, I need help, and I need help getting off of being addicted to this vaping. So that was also a great positive accomplishment that I was very proud of. Also, our focus on special education over the last few years, making sure that, we filled the vacancies for the AIDS perspective. We're now making other changes in the district that I think are going to also enable us to continue to improve on special education. We've been kind of deep diving into our special education programs and our approach with parents, and there's a lot of good stuff coming there. One area of improvement we've identified is just we need to do a better job communicating and having regular cadence with our parents from a special ed perspective so that there's more transparent communication. And hopefully that builds trust between the parents and the special ed programs, special ed office, and the teachers in the schools.
That sounds really good. And, I've been going to those strategic planning sessions, and there's been a lot of talk about how there's so much emphasis on special ed programs in the Ridgewood public school system. And this question comes from one of our listeners. I've noticed that the high school guidance counselors do not seem to have as much time for their students as might be optimal. I feel that students should have someone's greater attention to their needs, specifically for placements and not missing out on opportunities that could lead to closed doors later in the process. Do our guidance counselors have a heavier student caseload compared to other schools in the region? And then this listener also wants to point out that her children are typical. They don't require any special needs assistance, and they are not in any gifted or talented programs. So what can you say to that?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. In short, I don't know how we compare in terms of workload with our other districts, sister districts, and brother districts, if you will. That's something we can definitely look into. I will say we are making a lot of changes at the high school level because we've actually had some administration changes where our VP role has been open. We are going through the process of hiring that, but we're also going to be changing actually the guidance grade advisor, VP or a model to give a little bit more consistent support to our students. So it is currently a work in progress. So I think we will see some improvements there. But I definitely agree we need to focus more on guidance. I think we need more guidance support for our students. And I think the board in general agrees with that statement. We are making some changes that hopefully will address that, but more to come on that for sure. It is a work in progress currently.
Well, that's the perfect segue into the next question. Why are you running for a seat on the Board of Education again?
That's a great question. Why am I running? I am running because I believe there are still more improvements and more areas that we need to tackle to be in a good place. And one of those, for example, right now, I would say is probably the hottest topic from a town perspective is our flooding situation. And there was a New York Times article that just came out about how flooding has just increased across the country, period. So it's not a problem unique to Ridgewood. Climate change and other factors have contributed to just more flooding in a lot of places. But now how do we deal with that, right? Because the reality is it's putting our fields out of commission, and that is affecting our students that are unable to play sports, unable to be, unable to be physically active, and that contributes to mental well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, contributes to their future from a college perspective. And so it is a big concern we need to tackle. It's not an easy one because the brook currently is supposed to flood into that basin, if you will, which includes Stevens, includes the high school field, Maple Field, but that's a that's a village field. But now we need to find alternatives. We've actually engaged our architecture firm to build out a needs assessment to figure out what are the possible solutions to flooding. There are a few kind of ideas out there that we're still sorting through, but I'm hopeful that we can get through that. And also the other kind of big area for improvement that I see for our district is just continuing to focus on curriculum education transitions, right, between elementary, middle school, and high school. Also, in the last few years, we were able to make some additional improvements at the elementary level. We brought on 3 additional PE teachers to increase gym time. We brought on 3 language teachers to start implementing Spanish language in the elementary school. We brought on guidance counselors at the elementary school level. So we've been investing in the education, quality of education, but we need to continue to do that as well.
Congratulations, you're working very, very hard, and I can tell that you spend a lot of time and effort doing this. Let's talk a little bit about that. The amount of time and commitment it takes to be a Board of Education member is immense. And I'm not sure if our listeners recognize that this is a volunteer position. So what would you estimate? How many hours a week do you spend on this volunteer pursuit?
That is a good question. I'd say the average per week is, if I probably averaged out, it might be 4 to 5 hours. And it's ups and downs, right? Because of board meetings alone, sometimes we start at 5:30 p.m. for exec session, and it could go till 10 or 11, right? So one board meeting could be anywhere from 5 to 7 hours potentially. And then committees on the side, right, where we have to meet. So there's a couple of hours additional per week as well.
And you sit on several committees. Do you want to share the committees that you sit on?
Yeah, so currently I sit on the finance committee that's all focused on kind of the financial well-being of our district. And I also sit on the communications committee that's focused on how do we communicate with our constituents, with our families, with our residents. And then previously, actually last 2 years, I was the representative to the CPAG special education community, used to be called LSHSA. So I was a representative there. I previously served on the facilities committee, did a little bit of time on kind of parks and rec, but it was very brief. But currently it's mainly finance and communications.
That too is a big commitment. You know, we do have a lot of community engagement here. Again, going back to that strategic planning. And so I want to know from you, I guess I don't necessarily want to know from you, our listeners want to know, what role should parents, teachers, and the community play in school decision making?
I think parents and teachers are essentially the first line people, right, that are experiencing the school district firsthand. And so it is very important for parents and teachers to bubble up their concerns, to obviously through the right course of communications and escalation, right? If you have a concern with one of your children, you should go to the teacher first and the principal, et cetera. But for just general, and then you can always come to the Board of Education, right, after you've gone through teacher, department supervisor, principal, superintendent, and then just general concerns about the district, you're always welcome to come to the Board of Education directly. And that feedback is very important, right? We are only 5 people on the Board of Education. Few of us are current parents, very few of us. Most are actually not current parents, if I'm correct there in my numbers. And so the feedback that we hear from parents and teachers is very important, right? Many examples of those in the past have been, we had a lot of parents that came to complain about our vacancies from an aid perspective. We weren't super close to that as a board, and we took action about that. We had other situations in the past surrounding Orchard and the remediation that we were doing there as well. So that was very important to hear. Recently, parents have been bringing some concerns about special education, and as a result, we're now diving in deeper into special education. So definitely bubble that feedback. Our job as a board, though, is to hear that feedback, but also it's one input, right? We can't action, every time one parent comes to say something, we now do something in response to that parent. That wouldn't be the right way to act. We have to kind of look at things holistically. We have to look at the data, and we have to ask the right questions to say, hey, do we have a bigger problem here? And if we do, how will we address it? For example, when we were evaluating our aftercare program, we heard mixed feedback. We heard mixed feedback saying AlphaBest is not great, and lots of parents saying AlphaBest has been great. We're very happy. And so we said, what's really going on? Well, let's survey the parents, right? And let's get more data from the field to figure out what's going on. So in short, I would say speaking up, providing feedback is important. But also it's good. The advice I would give to parents and teachers is please come, please speak up, please share your concerns. But just do it in a way, right, where you recognize that, hey, you're giving us a piece of the picture or part of the puzzle, if you will. And it's our job as board members to look at the whole picture. And sometimes there's information we can't disclose that might be confidential. So definitely keep sharing your concerns, definitely do that, but just don't always get frustrated if we don't always respond immediately, because we need to look at things from a holistic perspective because that's our duty to the district.
Perfect. And I think it's important to remind parents that if they do have a concern, that there is sort of a protocol to follow. If your child is having an issue in the classroom, address it with the teacher. If you're having an issue at your school campus, address it with the principal. If there are bigger issues, then you can take them to the board. But I think even before you do that, getting into a home and school association meeting might be a great place to explore solutions to the issue that you are experiencing. Because as I understand it, the Board of Education you play more of an advisory role. You really can't say, oh gosh, thank you for that feedback. Let's fix it right away, just as you were mentioning. Is that correct? Did I get that protocol correct?
100% correct, Jeannie. That was exactly spot on. Because also keep in mind, we as a board, uh, like you said, we can't just jump in and start fixing specific concerns in the district because all of that falls under our administration team, right? Which is the superintendent, plus the principals, plus department supervisors, plus the director of curriculum. Maybe it's an HR issue that falls under our director of HR, right? So we can ask the questions and we can kind of put a magnifying glass, if you will, on the issue. But in the end, it is their jobs to come back with a solution to, first of all, do discovery. What is really going on? Do we have a problem? What does that problem or that issue look like? And then how do we fix it? That's in the end their job, but we can absolutely put a magnifying glass on it and kind of ask the right questions, because like you said, it's not our direct jurisdiction to really make those changes in the district directly, but we can definitely push and ask and push along, if you will.
Right. The other thing too is there's so much information at home and school association meetings. So for those of you who are listening that have children in the district, I cannot recommend highly enough that you get to those meetings. And a lot of times, some of the issues that you are concerned about have already been discussed. There's already a solution in the works. That was my experience anyway. And I loved going to those meetings because I was able to get sort of a backstage look at what is going on at our district. And it gave me more confidence in the strategic plan, if you will, for our district. And jumping from that, let's go into the formal strategic plan, as we talked about. Again, I've been in those sessions, and the thing that was the most glaring for me and the most uncomfortable for me was the mental health issues that our student body is experiencing. Can you expound on that and tell us something that the district might be doing to resolve or address those issues?
Yeah, so I think we'd have to get a little more specific there to figure out what the concerns are. But I 100% agree that mental health has to continue to remain the focus. And one thing I've always advocated for is the whole child, right? We have to, it's in our current vision and mission. And I want to ensure that it stays there because the whole child is the most important part of the equation, in my opinion. Yes, academic rigor is important. We want to maintain our reputation as a good district and all that, 100% aligned with that. But as we all can agree, as all the research and the science shows, an academically, rigored, I don't think that's a word, right? Academically challenged child is not always a happy child or a fulfilled child, right? The child that has passions and things they care about, whether that's arts or music or extracurricular activity or service, right? Or giving back to the community, or in addition to their academic rigor, right? Those are the things that really bring meaning, enjoyment, satisfaction to our children. And look, they're going to all enter, when they're done with school, they're going to enter, 30, 40, 50 years of being in the workforce, where all they're doing is working and producing and all of that. And so it's our job to really help them find the things that they care about that will have a meaningful impact on their lives. So that's kind of a high level. And then more specific, I think, how do we have the resources to support that? And like I said in the beginning, we made some investments just a few years ago in 3 additional guidance counselors for the elementary school level. And part of what they're doing is making sure that kids are feeling welcome, that they're a part of, I know my own son that's at Travell, for example, he's part of like a social group where they are meeting and getting to know each other to build better social bonds and encouraging better life skills and focusing on, the soft skills that these students need. And so those are the things that I think will make a big difference. And of course, we need to continue investing in that throughout middle school and high school.
For our listeners, I'd like y'all to just go through the list of episodes that we have done here at Ridgewood Talks and tune in to Meet the Leaders, because Dr. Schwartz talked a lot about the importance of having resilience and for building resilience in your children so they can thrive. And he had a very good piece about what parents can do to assist their kids from overcoming some of these challenges and helping them recognize that this is a part of growing up. You're going to have these challenges. You have to learn how to manage them. And it's up to the parents to provide the tools to these kids so that they can rise above some of these challenges that are just normal, everyday things that teenagers or children experience. Everything is in a crisis. A lot of this stuff is just put in our way for growth. And then I think the other part that he mentioned is that, we have to remember as parents that we really are preparing our children, as you said, for life and not just for college. So I highly recommend that y'all just listen to that episode, Meet the Leaders, and you'll learn a lot more about the inner workings of what's going on inside the Ridgewood Public School Districts, and also, of course, inside the village of Ridgewood and what the police department is doing. Now, we can talk a little bit about that. We've got school resource officers coming into the schools now. Do you want to expound on that, Muhammad?
Yeah, no, happy to. So we've had two SROs, we call them school resource officers. As of this year, we have now added another one, and that makes three. And the reason we did that, and this was an initiative Dr. Schwartz pushed that we supported as a board, is this way we can now have a dedicated person per building, right? BF, GW, and RHS. And that we felt will have a huge incremental value on our safety and security, because a lot of the research shows that just having someone, and this is not about like an armed officer type of security situation. That's not the goal here. The goal is to really just have someone that is a friendly face in the community, that is walking the halls, in there every day, getting to know the students by face, the teachers by face, and really just someone that's their job is to just watch for anything out of the ordinary, watch for doors that are being, left open, or maybe cameras that are, busted and not working properly, or recurring, maybe there's a door that just keeps kids always keep putting a brick in front of to stay open. And so maybe that's an issue we need to focus, right? When you have someone that's focused on watching for those things, that helps, but it also helps even internally, right? Because what a lot of the research has found is these SROs start to build relationships with the students and even the staff, that a lot of times they open up to them and they say, and some of those might be very important moments, right? Where maybe a student says, hey, Johnny or Jamie or whoever was acting a little weird today. I don't know if something's going on. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. And so, sometimes sharing these thoughts early in the process could, God forbid, prevent something bigger from happening. And again, just having someone in the school that is a direct line with the police department, hopefully will just be a huge impact to the safety of our schools. I mean, as we all see, we live in a crazy world today, and we cannot lose sight of safety in our schools. And so that's really the goal behind that.
And the other thing that I really appreciate about the SROs is that they are dressed in maroon polo shirts and khaki pants. They are very approachable. They do not look intimidating. They are there specifically so your student, so your child can have somebody to feel safe around, and to, feel like they're a trusted adult that they can go to if there are any other issues. So I'm really thrilled about that whole process of getting those SROs back into our schools. So thank you so much for, moving that forward. In your last campaign, you ran on a platform focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So tell us more about your passion for DEI and the strides in incorporating them into the Ridgewood Public School District.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thank you for that. I mean, look, DEI is a topic that I believe just nationally, I mean, maybe even globally, does not have a very clear definition of, what should we focus on and what works well and what doesn't work well. For example, does it mean hiring more diverse candidates? That's a piece of it. Is it meant to reflect, our ethnic and racial makeup of our Ridgewood students in our staff? That's a piece of it. Is it meant to be, that we are going to be more welcoming and understanding of other cultures and ethnicities and things like that? Absolutely, that's a piece of it as well. So is it hiring practices? Is it on the ground kind of implementation with our staff? Is it, the content that our children are reading and studying, right? There are so many elements of what DEI really is. So I just want to throw that out there, that it's not an easy, simple, we need to be doing more of X, right? And so, but it is a very important initiative, and we actually have it as one of our key four goals of our annual planning, which is focus on DEI. And what we're doing now is we hired a consulting company. I believe it's Montclair State has a consulting program where they consult with school districts. So we're paying them money to do it, where they are going to come in and evaluate our DEI practices, protocols, and make recommendations for what can we be improving. So that is, I believe, currently ongoing or about to be ongoing. And we look forward to those recommendations to see, what can we implement that's going to be better. I will tell you, one thing that I'm proud of is just kind of focusing on special ed, being the rep for the special ed community for the last 2 years, and the renewed focus this year, because special education students are a huge part of DEI. A lot of people forget that, right? People think sometimes ethnicity or culture, race, but it's more than that, right? It's also people that have physical and mental challenges that are also included in that DEI umbrella. We're moving to a more of an integrated model of schooling, where we integrate special education students with general education students. And so I think that's going to improve understanding and awareness and acceptance from our students for each other. And then one thing that I'm particularly passionate about, that I believe we can just make, get some nice, easy lift, if you will, or impact, is just ensuring that our teachers and staff are aware of religious differences, cultural, ethnic differences of our students, to ensure that they are meeting their needs. And then a few years ago, we made some changes to the school calendar as well, where we incorporated, previously the calendar was incorporating Christian and Jewish holidays, but now they're incorporating Muslim holidays, Lunar New Year as well for our Asian community members, Diwali as well. So I believe that's a more inclusive approach to the calendar, not just to meet the needs of those communities, but it's actually as an education for other students. When they see on the calendar Diwali, what is Diwali, right? And so now you ask questions. What is Eid? What is the Lunar New Year? Who celebrates it? What does it mean? What's behind it? And so it just encourages a world where we understand each other better.
Definitely. To celebrate other cultures is always so important. And I just want to applaud you, because I know that you spearheaded the initial movement for that. So thank you for that. And, going back into this DEI, I'm so grateful that you mentioned that it isn't just focusing on cultural and ethnicity, and it's about including people who are hearing impaired, maybe people who are in a wheelchair or use some sort of assistance to walk. Those people deserve to have some sort of inclusion as well. And I really am encouraged that you have a consulting firm that's coming in to help people understand what DEI actually means, because sometimes, as you know, things can get sort of disrespectful. And that takes me right into our next question. And I know it doesn't necessarily refer to you right now because you are not, quote unquote, campaigning, but I do think that it is an interesting question. How do you define respectful campaigning, and what steps are you taking to hold yourself accountable for maintaining integrity throughout this campaign?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. Look, I think there should just be some basic standards of what is acceptable in a respectful, right, democracy that we hope to aspire to live in. And in my mind, These are talk about the issues, have all the opinions you want, but keep it positive, right? We are, do not bully others, do not put others down, do not attack others for their thoughts, do not expose things that don't need to be exposed on Facebook, for example. Keep it civil on Facebook. Yes, public matters are public matters. We shouldn't shy away from it. But personal matters are different, right? And we should be respectful of that. And so that's, in my mind, it is free speech. Speak as you like, speak out. That is a constitutional right. But also, we all have a right to not intimidate, bully, harass others, because that is also an intimidation of free speech. So that is a constitutional right that everyone is afforded to be able to speak without fear of retribution or intimidation or harassment and bullying. And sometimes, people try to present it in the light of, I just, call it like it is, or I just shoot from the hip, or I just speak it like it is. And sure, do that, but don't make that just a nice, a convenient way to say you don't care about others' feelings and how they're going to make them feel and how we present in the public. I mean, this is 101, what we teach our children in school all the time is, no harassment, no intimidation, no bullying. Respect your fellow second graders, your fellow third graders. Don't make them feel bad. And yet, if we act in those ways as adults, what good are we, right, as role models for our children? So that's something that I strongly believe in.
That is a perfect answer. That leads us right into the next question. Who are some of the leaders that you respect and why?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think a little bit more about specific leaders. But I'll tell you the type of leader that I respect. And again, I'd have to kind of think a little bit more about specifics, whether from the corporate world or political world. But in general, I think people that are in positions of power that are not afraid to stand up for what they believe is correct and the right course of action, and holding to those values and beliefs, right, to make things better for their constituents or their employees or their stakeholders. Those are the people that I usually respect the most.
I like that answer. Is there anything that you regret doing or not doing during your term in office?
That is a good question. I would say, one thing that I talked a few years about that unfortunately I think the ball dropped a little bit more on, and I was actually just chatting today with somebody about this as well, is intramural sports. I believe that's could be an area that we implement as a district. It's not easy, right? There's a lot of logistical challenges around something like that. It's something that I talked about a few years ago that unfortunately I lost sight of personally. So I regret losing sight of that because I think that's something that could have a very positive impact on our students and children. So I do plan to go back and kind of bring that issue back up again in front of the board, and see what we can do in that space.
That sounds great. So thank you for being here with us today. And before we close, I would like you to hear what one of our listeners has specifically requested that I share with the incumbents. And this person wants to say, thank you for your very productive leadership lately. I think you are doing a great job. It's good to have more cooperation in town again because real things seem to be getting done. You are much appreciated. And I echo those sentiments. So thank you so much for all the work that you do for our district and really for our community. It is very much appreciated and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. But honestly, the thanks goes to you, Jeannie. I mean, having these kind of conversations where we just get information out there and people can get to know their political representatives in town and just discuss issues. Like you said in the beginning, it's a lost art, unfortunately, and things are becoming more and more corporatized, if you will. So we're losing a lot of that small town feel and ability to discuss issues. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate you being here and best of luck. I hope you win. All
thank
right.
you so much. As long as my wife votes for me, then I think I'll win. I just need the one vote.
All right. Take good care. And thanks again for making time for us.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.